So welcome back to the Raising Our Vibration podcast, where we explore higher consciousness through spiritual practice. Today, Stephen and I are going to talk about stabilizing awareness. In other words, making awareness, this boundless sense of awareness that we're always pointing to, your default mode. So let's talk a little bit about what a default mode is, and then also what this boundless awareness is that we're talking about. So a default mode is just kind of the state that your mind rests in when it's not focused on doing a task. So if you're kind of your mind when it's just the default mode for most human beings is the narrative self, as we've talked about before, in which we're engaged in mind wandering or self-referential thinking. We're ruminating, thinking about the past or the future, or thinking about judgments about ourselves or others. It's this narrative self that is constantly commenting on everything. And I think for most of humanity, this is the default mode, is that's that voice in our head that's always going on. And neuroscience seems to agree with this because they've defined a default mode network, which is associated with that type of narrative self activity. And that is the medial prefrontal cortex, and then the posterior cingulate cortex, the precuneus, and the angular gyrus. So those brain structures all network together when we're engaged in this kind of self-referential thinking, this narrative self. So if that's the normal default mode, what we're talking about is having a sense of vast, boundless awareness as our default mode. So is that even possible? Well, yes, it is possible. It's an experience that is well known through the ages, through all different spiritual traditions, although it certainly hasn't become practiced enough or known enough that it's the default mode for humanity. So let's start today with just a brief awareness exercise to give us a glimpse of what this awareness might be like. And then we'll go on to talk about 3 ongoing practices that you can engage in to stabilize awareness and make this awareness your default mode. So let's begin real simply with a simple practice. I want you just to look above your screen or look straight ahead if you're listening, and find a defined object in front of you, something that you can focus on. So whatever is in your visual field right in front of you, just focus on that and become aware of that. So just allow that to occupy your full attention. So whatever that is. So I have a ring light that's in front of me, so I'm focusing on that. So I'm aware of that. Okay, so can you say that you are definitely aware of that object in front of you? Yes, you're aware of that. Okay, now, so there's someone or something that is aware of that object in front of you. So now, while you're focused on that object, see if you can become aware of who or what is aware of that object. So kind of sit back. Who is aware of that object? So you may find that you need to kind of rest back or sit back into this space of that which is aware of the object in front of you. So as you rest back, you find that that which is aware of the object has kind of been in the background, but now you're resting back into that background. So you're aware of this awareness. So get a felt sense of that. So as you feel into this awareness, let's feel the quality of it. Is there any boundary to this awareness? Or is it simply open and vast, undefined? As you rest back as this open, boundless, undefined space of awareness, you can feel that, or you can sense it in some way. Since it's open, boundless, and vast, it has no edges. It's just open. Can you feel that it feels timeless? Since there's no defined space, it's just open. There's also no sense of time. So as you feel that, as you sense it, as you rest as awareness itself, now notice that object in front of you again as arising within and from this open space of awareness. So everything within your visual field arises within and from this vast openness of awareness. Now feel your body within this openness of awareness. You can even experience your thoughts within awareness. Awareness is that which contains all of this. It's that within which all of this arises, all experiences. Can you feel the sense of freedom, the lightness, the openness of awareness? It's a real liberation. So what if we can move through life as this vast openness, this light, open sense of awareness, just experiencing everything as arising within this. So there's no solid sense of being this body or this defined reality of separate objects. We just see all of them as arising and dissolving within this boundless awareness. So just let that soak in just for a moment. Oh, that feels like such a beautiful space to come from. So, Stephen, let's talk about how we can allow or welcome or recognize or realize that within all the moments of life. What are some practices that we use and that all of us can use to stabilize that sense of awareness and integrate it with our everyday awareness, where we feel like we're individual beings interacting with individual things? How can this boundless awareness be experienced as expressing through this apparent reality of separate things in a way that brings it a sense of lightness and freedom and joy and love.
Kevin, thank you. That was a very beautifully guided exercise, and love and blessings to everybody who's listening to us or watching this on YouTube. So coming to this boundless awareness as a default mode, so that it does become your ever existing and 24/7 experience. Kevin, you reminded me when you asked me that question, you reminded me of an old Zen story about the, practicalities of how we might come to this. And in the story, two students were arguing about a flag that was fluttering, and one of them says, it's the wind that's really moving. And then the other one says, no, it's the flag that's really moving. And they're both bantering this back and forth, and the Zen master who's sitting there says, no, neither the flag nor the wind is moving, it's the mind that moves. And I always think that's a very poignant story, that the movement of, our television news stories or our social media stories or our opinions about friends, we quite often project those and we perceive those as coming from something, when in fact we are the ones that are perceiving those. And so that very first step, it's almost like taking ownership of everything, that you truly are perceiving if you see a news item, and you can tell this by sitting down to watch the news with a friend, and both of you respond to it, and this is a very simple test, then we recognize that two people can see exactly the same news item, but have very different perspectives. As a lovely friend who came to see me yesterday, who was very struggling with this, said, oh, but for example, in the war, I've got this friend and she and I have exactly the opposite points of view. So they'd be sitting down and they argue about who's right. Now, of course, this is just pure perspective. And when you do exactly that beautiful exercise that we did, where we actually sit back and rest as source, or sit and rest as spacious awareness, or sit and rest in the tranquility and serenity of the moment, then both people can watch the news from this vantage point. So there's a whole difference. So in terms of practicality, Kevin, I think it's actually quite useful to consider going through those steps, of understanding how our minds are like they're like the flags in the wind, that actually it's our minds that are fluttering. And depending on which way the wind is blowing, our minds go this way or that. We feel angry or lonely or depressed or jealous or happy or sad. And
it's all about what thoughts are running through our minds, right? This narration, it's constant narration.
Constant narration. So we're not free, and we also don't necessarily see the possibility of open, boundless awareness as a default mode, because we're so carried away by our feelings and thoughts and the physical sensations that we perceive that's us. Our narrative self tells us that is the story of our lives, that we are our thoughts, our belief systems, our ideas, our past, our future, our sensations. So when we look at simple attention, so this is like going right back to shamatha practice, or the practice of becoming aware of awareness. We recognize, and you and I are going to talk about this quite a lot, about the baby steps that you take, because it's how to actually engage with awareness so that it does become your stable background state, so that because really it is the support of the mind. Awareness is what's there. When we recognize the ground of awareness, and we're aware of the ground of awareness, then in fact, the winds of emotions or thoughts might still blow, but instead of being carried away, we have this deep stability. In fact, we recognize that we're not the thought. We can actually recognize that, oh, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. I remember Mingyur Rinpoche described it, Kevin, in a way that you deeply appeal to you, that when you go to the gym, you have this goal of, losing weight or, building muscles. And so in the same of attention and awareness, you, just like going to the gym, gradually you'll see the fruits of your practice. And by taking these baby steps to build your muscles up, to build the muscles of awareness, you'll start to, you'll get so inspired, you'll think, oh, an emotion happened that normally would have dragged me into an argument with my friend about whatever it is, about the news item. But now I have some sense of stability. So that's the first part. So I do think that the first main exercise, just as you've outlined so beautifully, is that we become aware of what might be called our ordinary attention. Where does and become aware of that. Where does our attention normally go? It's a little bit like when we often discuss about brainwaves, that we say it's more important to notice your signature, like what are your brainwaves showing, rather than saying, I've got to get here, or they should look like this. We just notice what's present. So for example, at this first early stage of bringing attention to what you're aware of, it's a bit like looking at a cup. And, so I've got a glass here. It's you're not going to be able to see it if you're listening, but imagine I've got a glass. Now, when I pick up the glass, I don't judge it. I don't say, oh, that's a good glass. Oh, that's a terrible glass, right? I normally don't. It's just a glass. And this is what, as we start to practice taking ownership for our thoughts and feelings, that in that very early stage, so if you're listening, you just start to notice, oh, I'm angry, and it's okay, right? Or I'm sad, and that's okay too. Or I'm happy, and that's okay. So we start bringing this very, what I'd call basic awareness to every day. Yeah, right. It's just simply, you do it on the most simple, easy, baby step way, where you just kind of start to notice, you start to recognize, because our thoughts and feelings are not always clear. Some are really subtle. Some we've had them going on for a long time, so they're actually really deeply habitual. And so we get up in the morning, we always feel like it's a bit uncomfortable. We get up in the wrong side, we feel dull, or right? So instead of trying to push that away, just notice that's there. Notice the habitual patterns that you have, just like you might notice brainwaves. So it's the same with emotions themselves. They can actually be mixed up. We can actually feel a little bit of regret and some frustration thrown in all at the same mix. And they can be a bit challenging to pull apart. So at this stage, all you want to do, the very early stage, you just want to recognize, oh, I'm frustrated today. Or even, you don't achieve a goal, and you notice, oh, I wanted to get there. And all you do is notice it. Just recognize, oh, okay, I had this feeling of wanting to do better. And that's okay.
So recognition of anything is awareness. One thing Mingyur Rinpoche is always saying, well, like, raise your hand. Are you aware of your hand? Right?
Exactly.
That's awareness. I'm recognizing it. So you could recognize any thought, recognize any feeling, recognize any sensation, any situation. Just that quality of recognition is kind of also a quality of acceptance, right? And welcoming and embrace. I'm just recognizing what is. Not trying to change it, just recognizing it, as you're saying.
Right. And then when you have started to recognize, so here I'm talking about baby steps. I'm going through the baby step of, okay, I'm wanting to stabilize awareness. So having gone through that baby step of recognizing that you're aware, even when you're feeling a bit frustrated. Oh, I'm aware. That's a real aha. And then the next baby step, is to bring some kind of recognition of this meditative awareness, that when you have these thoughts and emotions arise, so this is another aha, and this is a very, very gentle tweak, is that you recognize that they can be used to stabilize awareness. So first you recognize that they're there and you're aware, but then you recognize, oh, instead of pushing them away or grabbing onto them, I can actually use everything that happens with this meditative awareness, with what we often speak about, this interoception, where you're turning towards them. So instead of pushing them away, so if you have, for example, quite a lot of people, Kevin, come to me but with anxiety, for example, and panic, or that kind of energy. So I encourage them to actually, having gone through the baby step of just looking at whatever's present without any judgment, then you look at, oh, so this panic that you've previously thought was your enemy, you might now be able to bring a meditative awareness towards it, where you, just as you were guiding, where you rest back, you rest in this calmness and peace. And the panic, as it comes up, can actually be your friend. It can be, you can start to develop a sense of relationship to it. Because when we push something away really strongly, we simply don't have any relationship. It's like saying to a friend, no, I don't want you. Sorry, you're not part of my life. So this is where you start to, instead of being swallowed up by the panic, because what happens with anxiety, right? You feel that overwhelming anxiety, and it kind of, you lose all awareness. But here, you actually, having recognized that the thoughts and the feelings help you to be, you can be aware, and you've learned awareness. Now you start to say, oh, everything I experience, including my anxiety in this case, which I'm using as an example, can actually become a meditative awareness.
It cues you to return,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Right. So that every moment of tension becomes a cue to pause, recognize what's present, and rest back as awareness, holding that gently within this space of awareness.
Exactly. And then at that point, what happens is you start to, having recognized that, so step one, you have recognized that you're aware when a thought or a feeling arises, and you're aware of it. Then that second baby step is realizing that even the tricky thoughts or feelings, that they can be assistance for your awareness. And so then the third part is you start to really intuitively tune in to how your thoughts and feelings and perception actually arises. And this has been one of my most interesting kind of studies with people, is that, so for example, everybody thinks anxiety is anxiety. Yeah, we're all anxious people. But in fact, when you start to deeply inquire into the nature of your own anxiety, you might find, and you compare it, and this is one of the values of us sharing with each other, you start to recognize, oh, actually, I find it difficult to hold on to anxiety because it comes and it kind of hits me hard, but then it's gone. So it's not actually as strong or clear as you think. And then you might talk to somebody else and they say, oh no, when I have anxiety, I feel it right through my body. Where do you feel it? And then you start to find, oh, I feel it in a different place than somebody else. I feel it in a different way. So you start to understand that your own, let's call it, signature of how you experience all these thoughts and feelings and perceptions is, so you start to become aware And this is another baby step, but you become aware of the way that those thoughts and feelings and physical sensations actually manifest for you. So you spend time with them. And so you learn, like, as I mentioned, Kevin, I had those really terrifying dreams when I was a kid of dying. And that made me so curious. You know, when I was in them, they were so clear, and I could write them down. I could tell people about it, but I'd scream every single night because I died. And that led me to want to actually understand.
Right. Inquire deeper.
Deeper. And I recognized when I spoke to people weren't having dreams at that age, and they weren't having dreams like that. So that made me think, oh, well, I'm going to have to come to a really deep, inquiry. I'm going to have to be more aware. So it actually prompted me, without me really knowing at that point what I was doing deeply consciously. It made me aware that I needed to do something about it, which was when I started dream journaling. So by spending time with those and really being aware, just as Kevin's been guiding you into, this is that third part. You start to really understand intuitively, oh, when anxiety comes, I need to loosen up a bit. When I loosen up, my anxiety is not so takes such a hold. Or it could be the opposite. If I just I feel really dull in the morning. If I just slightly tense my body and bring some energy to it, something happens. I don't feel so dull. So you start to really deeply inquire into your whole being.
Right. You start to unravel that complex.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing I've found really helpful is that if I can pause and kind of go back in time to when was the first moment that I started to feel that, if it was anxiety, when did that first begin to bubble up, and what was happening? What did I think at that moment? And then how did that thought make me feel? And how did that thought and feeling make my body feel? And then, so if I go back and I can kind of unravel that whole complex of anxiety and see, oh, right, it was when I had that call, or I read that news article, or I got that news, or I had that interaction, or this pain arose in my body, or whatever, right? So if I inquire back, I can start to say, oh yeah, and here's what thought was prompted and how that made me feel, and then the sensation that came about, and then it's kind of started to get wound up into this ball of tension or anxiety, right? So we can, through inquiry, we can start to unravel all that, and the strands kind of come apart, and we end up through that process of inquiry just back at that base awareness again.
Beautiful, Kevin, beautiful. And I think, speaking right to the heart of what we're sharing here is all of this. The whole point of all of this is that you're developing stability of awareness. The more that you bring awareness to this, just as you've described, the more you develop stability of awareness. So, for example, if you're listening right now, just to give you an example, so here's the way the baby steps can work at this stage now. So you've spent some time actually inquiring into, just as Kevin was saying, your the emotion, the panic, the challenge you have with public speaking, whatever it happens to be, the anxiety over your dreams, the challenge you've got with a partner. So what you can do is you can then consciously, with awareness, you can bring up small examples. So here I'm going again back to baby steps. You can bring up small examples of that, whatever that emotion is, or even another emotion, so that you start to work skillfully with awareness and notice how it manifests. So, for example, I might be having anxiety with dreams, and when I'm a little boy, and at the same time, I've got this anxiety because I'm being bullied at school. So that was something that happened to me. I was bullied at school by somebody who perpetually wanted to chase me around and beat me up, Kevin. So I learned how to run very fast. Now, so that might be the anxiety that I had about going to school could be something that I could work with. Maybe not the anxiety of the bully himself, because that was maybe a bit too much for me at that time. But certainly I used to have an anxiety about, okay, I'm going to go to school, whom am I going to meet? And maybe I'll meet that guy. So if you allow that smaller baby step of an anxiety or a worry to come up. So if you've got something and you're listening to us now, try bringing that awareness of whatever it is, a smaller emotion, this kind of what I call this baby step emotion. So here's mine. I'm getting ready to go to school. I kind of don't want to go. So I'm bringing up that feeling of whatever it is, or work. You've got you've been arguing with a coworker, and maybe you don't want to go to work and see that person. So bring that feeling up. And as you bring that feeling up, just notice it. So I might notice, oh, that feeling is still actually quite strong. That feeling of the coworker, or the feeling of not wanting to go to school. Or I might feel, if I just, as Kevin has been guiding you, if I just rest back and I open my awareness of that, if I allow that space, oh, look at that feeling of going to school now, or the feeling of going to work and potentially meeting that coworker. Oh, there's actually a genuine sense of openness. I feel a little more open. So, and then I can go back to exactly how Kevin was sharing, go back to the actual event. So now I can actually go to the coworker, or go to the bully, or go to the past event, and I can experience, oh, now I'm feeling a little bit more open to that. Oh, now I can feel that bully that I had such a lot of trouble with. And before, by just going straight there, it felt uncomfortable. But now I go back and, oh, actually, I'm okay. I can see I'm always going to be able to run faster than him. I might even be able to stop and say, hey, what are you doing? So something different, an openness to different possibilities. So by working with awareness, and again, we're just simply drawing you to the power of being able to stabilize awareness, is that what you're doing really is you're starting to encourage this ability to be able to work with even your stickiest, most troubling emotions and feelings and perceptions and thoughts even. And realizing that all the way along, this kind of attention practice simply develops stability of awareness. You're simply bringing this awareness again and again, and especially doing these little baby steps. You might not realize it, but you're actually deeply starting to encourage the stability of awareness over any kind of thing that might arise, any thoughts, any feelings. So you can also do that with, quite often I know Kevin and I do this practice a lot. We mentioned this in a previous podcast, where somebody has an uncomfortable physical sensation. So this is, if you're suffering, you might be suffering from depression, you might have had a medication that's feeling overwhelming, you might have had a recent trip to the doctor, and Kevin, you've mentioned your beautiful son Will, and that you've been struggling with body sensations and so on. So this is quite common for us, right? You have an area of your body where you don't feel that comfortable, and it's really difficult to stabilize awareness there. The moment you go there, there might be fear come up, or you don't want to see whatever's going to come. So what you can do in this case, and again, it's just like this baby step of bringing up a smaller emotion that could be related to it. Instead of going straight to the area where you've got the pain, try going to something little like a toe so I remember my wee daughter, Maya, who's 7, she was having trouble with a finger. And it was really bothering her because she'd cut it and the pain was obvious. So I said to her, why don't you, instead of trying to bring your attention to that all the time, because it's really bothering you, I said, what if you bring your attention down to your toe? And I actually gently squeezed her toe. And I said, why don't you stabilize your awareness of the feelings in your toe? Did you feel where I squeezed it? And she laughed and made a giggle. And she suddenly realized that, oh, she said, I don't know what's happened to my feet. It was her finger. I said, right, just for that moment, what you did was you became really aware of that toe, because it's like a baby step, right? Instead of going straight to the finger where you've maybe got fear around it because she'd cut it quite deep cut and she was really fearful of feeling it. So after I did the toe that I squeezed out, I said, now let's go back to that finger. She said, oh, she said, I'm still not happy about it, but I can
didn't grip her the same way.
Yeah, didn't grip her the same way.
Yeah.
So, these baby steps of working your way towards something, so that it's almost like you don't confront it instantly with, okay, I'm going to get this with awareness. And then of course you find there's all sorts of potential challenges in doing that when your awareness is not stabilized. Then simply bring it gently and kindly through those baby steps.
And then it's like we talked about in the last podcast, finding that safe space first, right? And then from that safe space, then we can approach anything and hold it within that safe space.
Yeah.
And so kind of cultivating that safe space is a big part of what we do in terms of stabilizing awareness, right? Through meditation practice, daily meditation practice is cultivating a reliable, safe reference point of awareness. And then we talk about how you begin and end your day with conscious check-ins of awareness. That's another way to stabilize awareness. Maybe you want to talk about those conscious check-ins just for a moment.
Well, I was just literally thinking the same thing about how important it is, Kevin, to not only step back, as you said, rest back and be aware, but also the conscious check-ins are actually ways of us both applying awareness practice and stabilizing it, and equally taking a break. I was just present to the fact that both things are important. Sometimes when you hear about awareness practices, and I've met many people over the years that I've taught in awareness practices, and they've come to a particular teacher, they get a glimpse of awareness, and then they're really, oh, this is fantastic, and of course, they get tripped up all over the place. And then they try and try and try. And of course, trying itself is the obstacle that you don't recognize. And then they give up the practice after a number of months because it's just seems like too much effort.
They think of it like some state that they're trying to get to and maintain or be all the time, versus awareness is not a state.
No.
Right. Awareness can be aware of states, right? But awareness itself is this openness within which states arise. Right? Exactly. And I think that's a primary confusion for people in terms of awareness practices, thinking of it as a state, whereas really awareness is that within which all states arise. So any state that's present, we can be aware of it. And in that recognition, there's awareness.
Right. And so it's really important with the conscious check-ins. The conscious check-ins allow you, so you can do these at the beginning of your day. I always encourage people to do this at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, because those are also some of what I call the sticky points, right? The moment you get up and you feel, oh gosh, my body feels so heavy, or you might feel, I feel extremely excited getting up. And equally at the other end of the day, you might feel, oh, I'm so tired, right? Those very moments are really wonderful moments to bring this sense of a conscious check-in. So just, if you are tired, simply become aware of the tiredness. Allow the tiredness to arise. And then rest in the simple awareness of the tiredness. Just go, oh, really recognize it. Just simply recognizing that you're tired is such a wonderful recognition, especially when you do it naturally and easily. You don't push it away. You don't grab onto it. You're just simply aware. Now, same thing in the morning. You might wake up, and if you feel excited, then also be aware. Oh, I'm in this excited space or energy, or my body's feeling very invigorated. Or if you wake up feeling dull, bring the same awareness. So this is part of the practice too, is really treating all your experience, emotions, thoughts with this sense of tranquility and serenity. So there really is a gentle equilibrium that you bring to everything, a gentle balance. And it's so wonderfully effortless and open when that occurs, when you start to realize, because we tend to grab onto the very exciting, oh, I've finally woken up and I feel invigorated. We grab onto that. And then when we feel dull, we push that away and say, oh, I don't want to feel that. Why am I feeling? So
right. The narrative self gets going either way, right? Either way.
Exactly.
Either spinning some happy story or spinning some tale of woe. Yeah. But either way, it's the momentum of the narrative self kind of takes over, and awareness is lost in the background.
Yeah. So the advantage of doing a conscious check-in, saying, I'm going to do this for a minute to wake up, notice what's present, rest back, sit back as source, or sit back as awareness, rest, relax, simply drop into that very gentle awareness. And then at the end of a minute, just let go. Don't drop everything, even drop the meditation, drop awareness. Like then you start to actually apply this effortless naturalness. You start to notice what's natural, and you can go through your day much more easily. And you bring another conscious check-in point, maybe when you're sitting down to have your breakfast. You do the same thing. You're suddenly aware, oh, okay, I'm eating when I'm eating. I'm eating the food. There's an eating going on. The body is generating certain saliva and juices, and you're aware of the energy going into your body. You do that for perhaps a couple of minutes or a minute. You're just simply aware. And then at the end of it, just relax, just be easeful. Now, as you check in like that, when you're in a way, you're bringing this gentle and very powerful energy of awareness at particular times during your day, without grabbing onto that as a state, because you're applying it and you're being very easeful with it. And then you're also learning how to drop it, how to drop and rest with whatever's present. And if you're still in awareness, that's great. You're still in awareness. And if things pull you somewhere else, then you can be gently aware of the fact that that happens and just enjoy it. Enjoy your day. Enjoy.
Any recognition is awareness.
Any recognition is. So you don't make awareness a really serious business. I've got to do this. I've got to be aware. You actually bring this sense of clarity and brilliance and brightness and radiance to your day, where you have these simple, beautiful, light, comfortable experiences of awareness practices. Then things start to feel very fresh. And even some of your difficult moments can feel fresh. You're suddenly bringing a different awareness to, you're no longer looking at them as the moments you don't want to have. You're looking at them as really gentle moments to bring what we've been talking about, these baby steps of awareness, so that you can actually truly be with them and not push them away, and not try to hold on to them either, but just simply allow and be open to them.
Yeah. So then as we are doing this throughout the day, we start to recognize that awareness itself is who we are, right? It's just, it that was in the background, but as we recognize again and again, we just, actually awareness is always present. Whatever you're attending to, you're aware of it, right? Awareness is always present. We're just not recognizing it as such. And so the ultimate stability is realizing I am vast, open awareness.
Exactly. Just simply recognizing that it is that simple. It's not there's no thought or feeling or perception or sense that is attached to that. Your thoughts and feelings and I think people think, Kevin, that your thoughts and feelings and perceptions and senses are no longer going to operate, that you're going to be in this other state. In fact, you're very aware of all of those. And you're aware in a very natural and easeful way, because you're simply this vast, open awareness. That
brings a different relationship to everything, right?
Yeah.
To who we think we are, to how we view others, how we view the events of life, is all a play within awareness of awareness as awareness, interacting with itself. And that's a whole different place to live from.
It's a beautiful place to begin. I was going to say end, but it's really a beginning, because this is really the beginning of all practice and the beginning of the beautiful practice of awareness, and how awareness can be a stable practice in your life. And that truly at a point you'll recognize that there is nothing other than boundless, limitless awareness.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Stephen, for this discussion. Thank you all for watching, for practicing along with us. And if you'd like to learn more about these practices, about subtle energy meditation, about the ROV meditation app, you can visit raisingourvibration.net. You can also find out how to join our Raising Our Vibration community of practice there. We'd love to interact with you there. So thank you all for being here, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye for now.